Greetings, dear friends. We're sincerely glad to welcome you again. Today we will have a conversation with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Hello.
Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video, we discussed the additional energy, that power which is now coming to us as a result of cyclicity. And we mentioned that despite the fact that we are in the area of diffuse light of this beam, still, even glimpses of this power are very much felt and already have a serious influence, and not only on the planet along with its climate and ecosystem, not only on the micro level, but also on us people, because we are part of this world. We are made up of these microparticles just like all living beings on this planet, and just like the entire material world, in fact. You also said that this power has one peculiarity. It strengthens what predominates in a person, and on the one hand, this is sort of a wonderful time for spiritual development, but on the other hand, as a reverse side of the coin, this power can also strengthen egocentrism and other destructive scenarios and states that exist in a human. Our viewers certainly liked this video very much. Many thanks to you for this information, and we received a lot of questions. One of them actually concerns the nature of this power. The question is the following: is this energy of life, this beam and this power, a power from the spiritual world?
Well, I'm just bewildered, to be honest. Let's put it simply. Any power, if we look at its root, at what it consists of, and then at what makes up that which it consists of, we will still come to the spiritual world. In other words, any matter comes to an end. Behind this matter, there is energy. The one that any matter consists of, this is already an indisputable fact. However, any energy consists of a certain power, so to speak, whereas this power consists of information, and this information consists of what comes here from the spiritual world. Well, something like that. I hope I haven't made a mistake and haven't confused anything. Therefore, based on the aforesaid, we can put it this way too. But if we remove this entire philosophy, then it is simply energy. It's an impulse. Yes, an impulse of life. Yes, it is extended for a lot of years. And it affects everything, as well as all matter in this world, including us. Why? Because, as Tatiana has said, first of all, it affects not only macro objects, but micro objects, meaning all our atoms and all the subparticles that make up an atom. Yes, this impulse gives a charge. It gives energy. But does this coarse, physical manifestation of this power have anything to do with the spiritual world? Friends, this is banal physics. It is just power. It is just energy, which orders matter and forces everything to move the way it should move. This doesn't mean that every particle is assigned its fate. No. On the contrary, this power gives freedom and new opportunities. Let's say, it's like a charge in our phone. If our phone is discharged, it's a set of microcircuit chips, iron, glass, and plastic, nothing more. But when the battery is charged, a phone is already a serious item that can let us do quite a lot. At the very least, communicate with each other, which means a lot, right? If it were energy from the spiritual world, just imagine you charge your phone and that's it. And each of us, when we turn on our phones, would see priests and imams there. Everything is wonderful and beautiful. Everything is so holy and spiritual. But unfortunately, it's all exactly the opposite. You get calls from just about anybody, far from imams or priests. Well, that's how it is all arranged in this world. However, we want everything to come from the spiritual world. Do you know what that would mean? We consist of elementary particles. Well, that's an indisputable fact. We are actually made of matter, whereas all matter consists of them. And these particles accumulate spiritual power. So we don't have to do anything at all. We are lucky. The heavenly gate opens before us right away, and we enter there because we're full of spiritual powers.
Spirituality is enhanced.
No, spiritual power is coming. Not spirituality is enhanced, but spiritual power is coming. After all, by his nature, a human does not need spirituality so much as he needs power. And as long as there is power, most people don't care whether it is spiritual or not. The main thing for a person is to be able to use it against people who are the same as him, merely that.
It is actually said that what comes from God is certainly much more powerful than what comes from the devil.
It depends on what side to look
And
from.
of course, when a person becomes spiritual, he becomes more powerful, which attracts many people.
Again, you said he becomes more powerful, and many people who follow the spiritual path are guided by what?
A pursuit of power.
By a search for spiritual power. And what do they need this power for? If we take an honest look, friends, the majority of people join religions in order to accumulate this very spiritual power. What for? To resist the devil, a demon in their heads, in order to overcome their vile animal qualities and become humans. Of course, there are many such people, thank God. But what about the majority? The majority pursue power. What for? Let's look at this more simply. There is a saint. How do we perceive him? If a person is holy, if he is spiritual, he is supposed to do what? He is supposed to read our thoughts, see all our diseases, and cure all our diseases with a single glance, right?
In a word, to influence.
And to rule. That's what people are looking for. Miracles, magic, and power that influences the material world, influences people's minds and thoughts, and enables one to control and manipulate the crowd. I'm not saying that there is no such power. Of course, it exists, and there are many examples of that. Every one of us felt the influence of such a power, and more than once. I'm not talking about the power in temples or anywhere else. We understand what kind of power is there. The point is different. People always look for some miraculous, supernatural power. And not in order to enter paradise, but in order to make their earthly life much better than it is now. Unfortunately, this is true. Therefore, what kind of spirituality can we talk about? What does power that influences matter, people's choices, and their lives have to do with spirituality? After all, a spiritual person doesn't influence anyone's life and cannot influence even his relatives and friends because he understands the freedom of choice. If a person really gains spirituality, he understands cause and effect relationships. He understands that every human is dual and that every human as personality has the right to be a slave of Satan or to become spiritually free. Not everyone dares to take the spiritual path. Do you know why? I mean the true spiritual path. I'll put it simply, a little bit associatively. The spiritual path, the true spiritual path, does not mean fame and does not mean authority. Not at all. It is the exact opposite. I would compare it to walking barefoot on sharp stones. You know that you have a long way to go. Your path is thorny and difficult, but you realize that beyond those sharp, prickly stones, there is a meadow with silky, soft grass. And when you step on it, you realize that it will never end. And it's enough for you to walk only a small journey of one lifetime over those prickly stones, so that afterwards you would never experience what you experienced here. Pain, suffering, injustice, sorrow, disappointment, and many other things. That's why a person follows the spiritual path in order to get rid of all this suffering, of all this injustice. And of course, on the spiritual path, he can support and help others to go over these stones, which are uncomfortable for a human. It is normal to help others, but one shouldn't force them or exalt oneself over them. This is really so. Let's recall the lives of true saints, and we will see that their lives are far from being peachy. Yes, many people are seduced. You know, it's like simony. They are seduced by the fact that people begin to love true saints, to respect them. There's a reason for that, you should agree. But people only see one side of the coin, the one that is too tempting for some. But at this moment, they do not see a huge number of those who spit at the backs of those saints, who hate them, who sling mud at them, and there are many more of such people. Unfortunately, such is the world. This world belongs to the devil. It is his world. He is the prince here. So it is natural that his followers hate spiritual people. Let's recall Jesus Christ. Can we say that his earthly life was happy and that he enjoyed this life here? Well, if he enjoyed this life, only those who do not know his life can say that. Let's take the Prophet Muhammad. What was his life like? These are the true messengers. These are the prophets. What was their life like? The same as the true followers had. They walked on prickly stones, experienced pain and suffering, but they did not stop loving God and loving people at that. That's what the power of the spiritual world consists in love, and in understanding that this world, no matter how unjust it is, no matter how much persecution there is against those who love God and people, it will all pass. It will pass very quickly, while ahead there is infinity, where there is only love, where there is no suffering, and it is worth it. What would you trade all this for?
For an illusion which this world creates.
This is really so. In fact, an illusion of everything, an illusion of life, of some joy. Joy of what? Of acquiring something new. The joy of eating something tasty. It is actually enough to acquire something. And it is no longer joyful. It's enough to eat something, and it's no longer joyful. After all, that's the way it is. And everything in this world, except love, is finite. What is there to rejoice about here? Let's say there is something to rejoice about here too. That very love, isn't this true? And no matter how you look at it, the highest power, and what makes people walk on these uncomfortable, slippery, prickly stones that cause pain and suffering with every step, is certainly love. This is something much more important than physical pain, people's stupidity, and all kinds of mud. Because whatever mud is slung at a saint in this world will remain in this world. That's the whole answer. Because a person enters paradise in absolute purity. There is no mud in paradise. As it was in this world, so it remains. And it's impossible to dive into a swamp without getting dirty. That's normal. So what kind of power are people looking for? The power of mud or the power of purity?
The power that strengthens the demon, or on the contrary, weakens the demon in a person.
Yes, it's a fight for authority among demons. And you have noted correctly, what does a person search for? And who makes a person search for this power? Nobody but the demon. There is really both an angel and a demon in each of us because we are dual. And the demon always tries to dominate. He is always fixated on his own selfishness. The whole world revolves around the demon, whereas an angel lives for the sake of this world. Just behold the difference. To love people, to love this world, to do everything for this world to exist, to do everything so that people do not forget about God, because God is love. If there is no God, there will be no love, and there will be no point in having this world. Therefore, the essence of everyone who follows the spiritual path is to increase love, true spiritual love, while the essence of everyone who lives in slavery to that very demon is to serve the demon, to serve matter, all earthly things, and to feel just emptiness ahead. This is not life. This is existence in illusion, in the illusion of authority, in the illusion of wealth, or on the contrary, in the illusion of poverty and attracting someone's attention. Because the most valuable thing for people who live under the dictatorship of the beast within themselves is to attract attention. For other people's attention strengthens the power of this demon. Isn't that so? And the stronger the demon is, the more authority and might he possesses. Let's look into this. After all, a lot of people, being in different religions, make various, sometimes inconvenient, and very expensive trips to places of so-called power. Many Christians, for example, go to the Holy Sepulchre or to Mount Athos. Why do they travel to these holy places? To accumulate power. In Islam, Muslims perform Hajj. What for? To come into contact with God. To walk in the footsteps of the Prophet. That's ridiculous. We know why they go there. Everyone feels and understands that, and everyone has seen those who return from there. They come back inspired and elated, and each one of them feels like he is literally a saint, like they have 16 wings, 27 legs, and 3 heads. The true saints of modern times. Yet, how do they act? Once they have returned, do they share love? A simple question. No. They don't. As a rule, they share what is predominant in them. And this is, first of all, a dictatorship, an attempt to dominate others, because he has come from holy places. So we should already admire him. We should listen to his words, because he is nearly a saint. In other words, it is trivial simony. For a person who is following the spiritual path, for whom the whole meaning is God's love, contact with Allah, can ordinary domination over someone have any value for him? Mutual respect can. Love for neighbors can. Yet, who is a neighbor to such people who live according to the will of Allah? It's a simple question, as it would seem, but the answer is extremely complex. Those who are not impressed by the Prophet's feats, those who don't understand his life and don't live the way he did, will not understand. But those who truly abide in God's love perfectly understand that the most important and the closest people are all people, every human being who has a soul. For the soul in every human being is what is the nearest and dearest. It is what makes us a single whole. Although, at the same time, each of us remains who we are. In other words, we are one in many, and many in unity. So, if you look at the whole essence of this world as it is, everything becomes perfectly clear. The devil divides us. He divides us everywhere and in everything, even within ourselves. After all, those very demons argue in our head and make us, as personality, choose the position of one or another demon inside our own mind. Not to mention other people. Demons divide us in families and among friends. They alienate nations. They divide and rule. Meanwhile, what does Allah do? He unites us. He indeed makes us one united ummah. Some people say that there is no ummah, and we all know that it is fragmented and disunited, while in fact, it isn't so. We cannot separate our souls, for they are united. They are from the same world. They are woven of the light of Allah. Tell me, how can we obscure the light of Allah with our darkness? There is no way. We can only turn away from it. But when we turn our face away from that light, it is then that we become simply blind, and we do not see the reality that Allah has sent down to us. Isn't that so? We lose love, keeping just pride, meanness, and all the abominations that Shaitan imposes on us. That's the whole point. Our choices determine who we are, where we go, and what we strive for. As for power, yes, power is far too enticing, but only for a demon. A person who follows the spiritual path, who truly loves Allah and respects the Prophet, doesn't need power. He has it. Yet it's not that power which demons seek, but the power which opens the heavenly gates
And this is far more important.
than any magic and any illusion that Shaitan might create. For whatever is created by the dead is dead, whereas whatever is sent down by the alive is alive. That is the essence. And there is no greater power than God's love.
For it is
The highest power and the highest meaning of human existence. That's what you should strive for. While everything else is just everyday life, just a road covered with sharp stones. And no matter how you twist it, this road ends. The only question is where you will enter. Into the abyss? Is everything material and temporary? Or into the vast meadow with silky and soft grass under the bright sun, which is the love of Allah. It is us, only us, who choose. But, unfortunately, the demon is strong. He distracts us from this light and makes us turn our face away from love and from the truth. He covers even the light that comes from Allah Himself, from our souls. He covers it with trivial illusion, a play of different colors, different pictures, and problems that this demon himself creates. Yet, we have the right, we, as human beings, have the right to choose to plunge into illusion and to step off this path covered with sharp stones onto seemingly soft soil, while in actual fact, the essence of that soil is a swamp from which you will never escape. Or actually, not to pay attention to what is unpleasant for you now. But is it unpleasant for you or for the demon? There is a deep meaning in this too. When you understand that your demon is freaking out because every step you take on the sharp rocks makes you stronger. Why? Because you're getting closer and closer. With every step you take, you're getting closer to eternity. And that's the meaning. And that's where the power is. Power is in eternity and in God's love. Or you focus on discomfort, that your feet are prickled, that someone is slinging mud at you, and that there is no peace in you. How can there be no peace in you if you have God's love within you? A simple question. But when you feel troubled inside and you have no confidence, it means that you are already controlled by the demon and you are already in an illusion. You see how simple everything is. However, when you have God's love inside, you don't care what is under your feet. The main thing is life. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you and God's love.